It's good
What's
to
up,
be a part of
Alex?
this. I swear
Hey.
this isn't my first clubhouse. I swear to God.
Hey
Oh yeah.
everyone.
Hey Dan. All right, awesome. We have the crew. This is exciting. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Double Down. I'm pumped. This is my weekly show on Clubhouse at the intersection of consumer tech, commerce, culture. I love hot takes. Hot takes are very appreciated. And I am pumped for this episode about celebrities and startup investing with this fantastic crew. So let me quickly introduce everyone. Got Alex, who is the one half of the Chainsmokers and the founder and partner at Mantis VC. We got Jay, who is the early stage investor and co-host of the Game Plan podcast, where he interviews pro athletes about their business interests. We got Dan, who is the founder of Trapital, a media platform about the business of hip hop. I feel like, Dan, you've been analyzing rappers' investment moves before it became cool. You're the OG. Amanda is the partner at Plus Capital, a venture fund and advisory firm working with such Hollywood celebrities as Tyra Banks and Matthew McConaughey on their startup investments. And last but not least, Noah is the NBA player whisperer and the founder and managing partner at Crossover, a tech fund whose investors include many professional athletes and entertainers. So we'll chat for kind of 30 to 40 minutes and then jump into audience questions. If you're in the audience, head over to doubledown.show to drop your questions or to leave any comments. And if you raise your hand here, just know I'm not ignoring you. I will call on you in 30 minutes or so when we get to that. So let's get this started. For starters, I would love to hear from everyone. 30 seconds. Do you think overrated or underrated on celebrities investing in startups?
Who's gonna start?
That's bait, right? Like who's taking that?
Is it fad or is it a fundamental shift?
Okay, I'll start. I mean, I think that right now it kind of feels like a fundamental shift a little bit. I do think that there should be some caution thrown to the wind about those celebrities that are getting into the space. I mean, I'm only about a year into it with the fund, and I've been angel investing for 5 or 6 years now. But I think if you want to take it seriously and be successful in it, it is a full-time job, and there's no doubt about it. You really have to commit yourself to it, and it's exciting. But I think if you do that, you'll find a ton of parallels between the things that you do that are inherently a part of your daily life and your access and your network that will be really helpful to a lot of the companies that you're interested in. And you can provide a lot of insight. I mean, I always say I'm like the Ted Lasso of VC. So, that's my 30 seconds.
I love that. I would also say I tend to agree, but I also think that it's not just about investing. It's about capturing upside that these people are generating. So people like Alex or some of our clients, when they're getting involved in companies, they're creating a tremendous amount of value with respect to customer acquisition or brand awareness or even like specific sales. But when you're doing an endorsement, you're getting paid a flat dollar amount usually, like unless there's some royalty on the back end. And so if you're investing and you're owning a piece of something that you're building, I just think it's such a better alignment of interests. I don't think investing is for everybody. Or in this capacity, I wouldn't suggest that people do it by themselves without somebody to help sort of point them in the right direction, particularly at the early stage where the risk is really high. But I think that aligning interests of founders, teams, along with the people that can help amplify those missions and products is a really, really interesting way to approach this model of business that's not as cut and dry as let me write a check and hope to make a lot of money in the end.
So Mags, I know you said you like hot takes, so I'm going to come in with one here. I think that while on the whole, it is a really positive move that we are seeing folks from the entertainment world, athletes, entertainers, actors, get involved in tech and startups. I think the expectation that a lot of startups have about what a celebrity investor is going to do for them is way overblown. And I think the challenge that we are seeing quite often today is that there are a lot of celebrities and athletes that get used as PR fodder and basically used for a press release. And then 6 months later, when the founder needs help getting an intro to a major chain because they're a D2C brand that wants to go omni-channel, or they need help getting intros with some sort of intro to an event so that they can get on the panel and speak, and they're expecting their celebrity investor to step in and do a lot for them. I think that's when you start to see the quote celebrity investing group get a bad name. And I think the big challenge here is not a function of the fact that like the celebrities have volunteered to do anything. I think they are investing their capital. They're diversifying their capital into a bunch of different asset classes. I think the challenge is that the expectations are not always set up front. If you want your celebrity quote investor to do a lot more for you, then you have to incentivize them a lot more. And usually that means more equity that startups aren't always willing to give up.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I agree with what Jay and Amanda said. I think that, look, when you're in a bull market, it's easy to get lucky, and a lot of folks are going to just kind of jump in. But what I look for is discipline. Investing is a skill set. You have to do the number of reps that you would do if you're a professional athlete, or the number of reps you'll do if you're a musician or an entertainer. And so I think it's important to realize that we're in a bull market. And I think that, when markets shake out is when you really know who has the discipline and who's actually built systems and processes in place to continue to be successful when it's not just rising tides. And the other thing I think is that it's just depends on what vector you're looking at the opportunity through. If you're working with a client like Amanda's referred to with a Tyra or someone like that who has the name recognition, then absolutely there's an huge opportunity to do what they're doing to unlock opportunities and capture that upside. But there is a massive number of folks out there who just don't have access to the technology sector who should, and they're not going to get in because of name, image, likeness. And so I think it's just different ways of looking at the market. One is just getting access and exposure to the growth engine of the economy, and the other is using the influence of your name, image, likeness for endorsement purposes. And I think that's an important differentiation, just to make in looking at the market.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a few factors going on. We've been in a bull market, so we've seen so many celebrity investors and athletes and all across the gamut jumping in and getting more involved, which is great. I think it's exciting. I've definitely covered it quite a bit, but I do think that any type of investing, especially since so much of this is early stage, it's really about patience. So I do think that in a few years, you'll probably start to see a bit of a divergence where the people who are really about it and they have everything set up and they're willing to set everything up and they can see the long-term aspect and really have a game plan for it, they will fare off better than the people that just wanted to become investors because they see that it's the hot thing right now. In some ways, where the angel investing, especially with celebrity investors, was a few years ago, kind of reminds me of what you're starting to see with NFTs in a sense now, with that you have a group of people who are serious about it, then you have other people who are trying to just capitalize on the cash grab. So I think you'll eventually see the same because you keep cutting a lot of these early investment checks. It does add up, and not everyone is going to have the exits that we see. So it'll be interesting to see where it is in a few years, but I still think it'll be here.
That's totally fair. The one other thing that I'd say, though, is that's not necessarily specific to celebrities, right? Like, just because everything has been up and to the right in venture capital for the most part over the last couple of years has brought a number of other people that are starting their own funds that are not celebrities too. And so I think at some point there's a correction and everybody falls back to earth. And to Noah's point, like, has to maintain some level of discipline and thought around portfolio construction in order for this to work.
Yeah, it makes me think of that Warren Buffett quote that you only find out who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. We haven't seen the tide go out yet.
Exactly.
So Alex, I want to start with you on kind of specific questions here. This has been a great start so far. So, you've been a successful DJ on tour most of the year. You have a ticketing company, you have a tequila brand. Like, what motivated you to get into investing? Because I'm sure you're not bored.
Yeah, I'm definitely not bored. But, I think it started when we had some success musically. We have a great business manager who's been a really helpful guide to us in our career. And he, recommended we start investing into, and creating passive revenue streams. And we, as the Chainsmokers, we had a lot of opportunities inbound to us. And they're really cool things, but they're all mostly like CPG stuff and things you'd, imagine coming after the Chainsmokers for. But we learned a lot in that process of being angel investors, which is the importance of the team, the relationship that you have with the founder, being value-add investors, and just, the type of things that were exciting for us to be a part of. So we did that for a few years, and lucky for us, a big part of our job or life is just really about hospitality and relationships. And that's always been the backbone of everything Chainsmokers related. It's always about togetherness and bringing people together for great experiences and acknowledging everybody. And because of that, we've made a lot of great friends, some of them in tech, and people like Justin Kahn and Steve Huffman, who really like shined a lot of light on like their space to us. And we were just fascinated by their work and in the tech world. And we kind of realized that we were really missing out on a lot of opportunities by waiting for things to come to us instead of leveraging our own relationships and network and seeking out the opportunities that were out there. So that's kind of when we began to formulate the idea of starting a fund. But it, you know, it's been really exciting. And I found that through the investing we've done in the last year, that a lot of founders out there, you know, they want like I don't know what a relationship between Sequoia and a founder looks like, or Andreessen or Benchmark, but for us, it's like a really one-to-one friendship that we love to have, a companionship, and we like love forging those relationships with our founders and being there for them in a really like like close way. And I think as a founder too, in building the Chainsmokers and what it is, I understand the struggles, the excitement, and stress of what they're going through. And for us, that's like a really thrilling experience to be a part of these brilliant young people that are disrupting these huge industries, and it couldn't be more exciting to learn about what they're doing. And for Drew and I, it's just like we love to push ourselves into uncomfortable areas and try and swim, and we're, you know, really enjoying it. And it's been an incredible process, and even the fact that like I'm here speaking to you guys is really cool to me.
It's hilarious to me that an A-list celebrity like you is probably more relatable to a founder than a partner at Sequoia, but that's probably true.
First of all, I don't know if I'm A. I'm probably more close to a C.
Oh,
B.
sure.
Like a B- celebrity. But yeah, I mean, you know, like that to me, it's like we're all curious about what each other's lives are like, and being a part of it. And, you know, we're all searching for like friendship and advice and mentorship. And I know personally, I've never really had any mentors throughout my life, and I don't consider myself a mentor to anybody yet, at least. But just being able to like sit back with someone and relate like on a personal level can really be helpful to a lot of these guys. And they're going through these founders are going through it, in some great days and some bad days. And just being able to like answer a text or a call at 2 a.m. or 12 p.m. in the afternoon, I think it means a lot to them. And I enjoy that like process of working really closely with them and being friends. And hopefully that's what will continue to set us apart from, you know, other investors that get into space and celebrities. And I hear it all the time with, XX celebrities interested in investing. And I'm just like, that's terrific. And I don't remember who brought up it, was Noah or Jay, about, you know, just throwing their name in a press release. And if that's like all you want, then sure, go for that big, shiny, you know, celebrity ball. But for us, it's like I really like we put in the work, and I just don't know how many other celebrities are going to be willing to do that to the extent that at least we are.
It's a function of time, right? I kind of feel like, I mean, you mentioned this at the top of your thing, which is like you have to be willing to dedicate the time to it. And we hear it a lot from athletes where when you're in season, like that's just impossible, right? And so you have to set those expectations, which is like, hey, cool, like if it's the NFL season from August to January, like I'm probably not going to be as available. And I think that's sometimes the challenge, is that startups are, you know, expecting a round the clock investor, which they can't have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kevin Durant is a terrific investor, and Maya and his team are amazing at what they do for him. And, you know, I don't know how active he is for them, but I have to imagine he's seeing everything and helping make, you know, the right decisions. But for us, it's like, you know, when shows come back online, it's going to be a interesting thing for us. But I think like actually it's going to help us a lot, because our shows are an extension of who we are, and bringing people to, you know, into Vegas, to, you know, arena shows and to festivals, and giving them the people those experiences. These are kids that have been heads down on their projects for 10 years. And I know that like there's a culture around VC, which I'm learning, which is like, don't poison the well sort of attitude. But like, there's status quos that I just don't think are as important as people lead on to believe. And like you give, you know, I just see it often. It's like, obviously keep your eye on the prize, but it's important to like, I mean, I literally have like work hard, play hard is the motto of the Chainsmokers.
I'm excited to put Vegas trips into my calendar as sourcing trips. This is going to be great.
May 15th, baby. Let's go.
Let's do it. Dan, I have a question for you, because you've been studying this trend for a while, and it at least seems to me that rappers were really the pioneers of translating their, artistic success and cultural relevance into investing. And like, why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, there's a few reasons, I think. I mean, I will say that at least on the investment side, there were people outside of hip hop and in the music space that were active, and even in the celebrity space. I mean, I think about someone like Ashton Kutcher, who, of course, is still one of the most prolific, but had inspired a lot of other people to get into a lot of the early stage investing they've done. But I also look back to like the mid 2000s when Jay-Z and a bunch of other people had invested in Carol's Daughter and a few other brands like that. And I feel like that was also one of the earlier moves. You had 50 Cent, the vitamin water deal. And those examples have always stuck out. And I think it stems to hip hop's just having a bit more of an entrepreneurial vibe and culture, more relative to some of the other genres of music. And I think that comes from a bit more of that hustle mentality and the brand that comes with that. A lot of the artists themselves are just unfortunately more likely to come from rougher backgrounds or they're having challenging upbringings. And then you compound that with the fact that when they either try to make it in the music industry or they try to get ahead, there's a lot of gatekeepers who hold those gates tighter than with people coming through hip hop relative to their peers. And because of that, they're more likely out of practice to either try to build their own or try to do their own thing. Like, to bring up Jay-Z again, he was one of the reasons he started Rockefeller Records is because he couldn't get a record label to sign him. So I think that mentality then makes him much more likely to want to see and invest in other people that are doing their thing. And it's similar to what Alex was saying a little while ago about how he had gone through it and he understands it. And in many ways, that can make him more relatable to a founder than a partner at Sequoia, right? So I think a lot of that just ends up transpiring too. And then you add that with this whole concept of ownership and wanting to really invest and put your money behind others and not necessarily wanting to rely on the man. Like all of those things circling and having this compounding effect, I think is why you've seen so much of this become so commonplace in hip hop to the point where you see a company like Triller, there are now dozens of rappers and artists that are on that cap table. You see artists like Jay-Z and Nas, and it's ironic that the two of them had one of the biggest feuds in hip hop, and they're now two of the most prolific investors right now, two very different approaches of how to go about it. But they are. And I think when you have people like that are still looked up to and revered by artists, they want to model their moves. They want to see what they're doing. So when they see the moves and the impact and the wealth and the generational wealth they're able to create, they want to be able to do the same thing. So it's a tight-knit community, and people being able to continue that can make a pretty big impact.
I love it, just spitting facts here. It actually makes me think of Alex. You guys started with true growth hacking approaches to the Chainsmokers. So in that respect, it's no different than building a startup and gaining distribution for your music, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the same. I mean, I was going to mention this earlier that, a lot of celebrities, like they built a brand. It's a company. It's, they're generating hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes. And, they have teams that support them the same way that these startups and founders have. So I don't think it's a lot different. And obviously, you can I actually hate working with artists, musicians. I think they're the laziest people on the planet. But there are some good ones out there. Like Ryan Tedder, to me, is like a great example of an artist that's always thinking like a business person and getting into different things. I mean, we've been investing for ages now and always approached our music career kind of like from a tech point of view of like, how can we disrupt this space? What angles and shortcuts can we try to like expose to help ourselves? And, at the end of the day, like the music's still music. There's no shortcut to making a great song. But there are like great ways from a promotional standpoint, from crowdsourcing your tours to like creating better connections with your fans, to like reading the room. I think like this generation of music listeners, like remember I'm 35. I used to go buy CDs and listen back to front. Like that just doesn't happen now. So like the whole process of releasing music is entirely different. So, we're pivoting the same way companies are. And I think it's really exciting for us. I mean, I literally get starstruck when I meet certain founders and people like that, because I think they're just incredible. And I also think it's worth mentioning that like there are a lot of tech people that are bigger celebrities than any celebrity on the planet from a traditional standpoint. Like Chamath is like a legend, like a star now. Naval, Elon, obviously, you know, these are guys that are talked about more on the internet than, you know, a Brad Pitt is. So I think there's like a lot of cross-pollination happening now, and I think it's like, you know, sites like BitClout are representative of that, and it's going to be really interesting to see. And I think, you know, that it's like this weird function of like hype and celebrity mixed with like intellect and function that's going to lead like to a really crazy next couple of months, I think, or a couple of years.
Maybe if I can add to that, Alex, I think it's a really good point. I think the key difference that I think a lot of people maybe underestimate is that the key difference is how you define how the celebrity, quote unquote, celebrity is being leveraged. Again, it comes down to, are you investing in something that your name, image, likeness, or your experience as a musician, as an entertainer, as an athlete is being used and it's relevant to that opportunity, which is why you naturally see a lot of athletes investing into Tonal, or you see a lot of celebrities investing into a Triller. But that's very different than an approach where you're trying to gain broader exposure to the technology sector. I mean, technology as a share of the economy is growing rapidly year over year. I mean, it was about 15% of the economy in 2015, 2016. Now it's about 22%. It's going to be 30% by the end of the decade. And so if you're looking at this trend line of where the engine of the new economy is, people are looking at their overall financial position, and they say, do I have adequate exposure to this growth engine of the economy? And the challenge is it's hard to get that access, it's hard to get that exposure to the growth center of the economy through the public markets anymore, because so much of the wealth creation is shifted to the private markets, and it's in tech. So it's essentially created this push for everyone to try to get into private tech, because that's where the smart money is being made. And so to bring it back to celebrity, I think that if you have the celebrity name and you have the insights and you're investing in things or getting extra equity in things because of your brand or what you can bring to it, that's fantastic. But if you're looking at it from a macro perspective of how do you get exposure to this growth center of the economy, the thing that I think people are short-sighted about now is that they're not using their celebrity platform to get access to a vertical SaaS company, an enterprise company, or something that might be outside of something that works for them as an athlete or a celebrity. So I think that's the important thing is, you know, Alex is being smart because they're building a portfolio that's going to have diversified set of assets. But when you see athletes and celebrities cutting these checks and these massive checks into one company or two companies, that's where I get really concerned just overall for you know, how they're looking at the future.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Although I would poke a hole a little bit in saying that there's a role for artists and athletes to play in the enterprise technology space. And Alex and his partners at Mantis have done a really great job of this, which is they're not just writing checks. And Alex, don't let me speak for you, but at least with our client base, when they're writing checks into enterprise technology businesses, it's not just because it's a great investment. Yes, it is, but oftentimes it's also mission driven. And just because they're not going to hold it up on a commercial and say, I drink this product because it's an enterprise tech business, doesn't mean that they can't be supportive. They're just supportive in a different way.
I think we're in violent agreement here, actually. Sorry, just to clarify, man. I think we're in violent agreement. I'm saying that I think that those like Alex, Kevin Durant's done a great job of this. Your team has as well, helping these athletes and celebrities gain access to things outside of just where their perhaps name, image like this can be used. And I understand what you're saying. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I am actually in agreement with you.
Yeah, but awesome. Noah, so one challenge I think with that, right? So, and I don't know if this is the path that you were walking down, Amanda, is that the name actually allows the talent to get access into the deals. But by using the name, I think there is an implicit expectation by the startup that they are going to be involved in some more active way. And Amanda, I think you said this when we were on a panel, you know, in the past, which is like, think about how many angel investors an average startup has, like how many of them are actually leaning in, right? So it might be an undue expectation to say, I want my talent investor to be as actively involved as my most active angel investor. That doesn't always happen. But if the business manager or if the talent themselves is using their name to get access to a hot deal, then I think that startup is right in expecting, hey, you're gonna like lean in and do something for me. This isn't just about you widening your exposure into the technology platform, you know, because I'm the hottest deal that you want to get into right now.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely agree with you in terms of expectation management and coming in and saying, hey, like, for example, I'm in season. I'm not going to have time to play this biz dev role for you and open up doors and open up a Rolodex that I have unique access to based on who I am in order to help you close contracts. But I think you're spot on, which is like there has to be alignment from the get-go. If it's purely about using your name and likeness in order to get into a deal, that's one thing. But if you're showing up to the table and saying, hey, I'm using that as a mechanism for starting a relationship with the entrepreneur and then finding a way to actively support them just in a less obvious manner than, say, like the vitamin water model, I think that's a really, really viable and interesting opportunity set. And to Noah's point, like, yes, portfolio construction and portfolio approach is certainly the right way to approach this style of investing as it is in any other asset class.
Yeah. And I also, like, I mean, like straight up, I remember our pitch to LPs. It was like, we're going to be consumer focused and invest across that, along that vertical. And then literally like a month into it, we're like, why the fuck are we doing this? Like, let's just be opportunistic. Like fintech and SaaS all day, baby. Like that is the move. and, you know, I was nervous when we began to like kind of switch gears. But the truth is that you don't understand how helpful you can be to those companies until you just are. And I always like kind of position ourselves as bloodhounds for our founders. And, you know, their company, a company like Vise, which is, you know, an AI technology for RIAs. And it's like, what the hell do the Chainsmokers fit in? It's like, you know how many RIAs that we know? We've made probably more introductions for them to RIAs than anybody has in the space. And, you know, a lot of the times, like just going simply back to the relationship, it's like a founder will be like, hey, do you know Drew from Dropbox? And it's like, yeah, we do. And it's like, I feel like I could learn a lot from him. And it's like, I will reach out to him on your behalf and connect him. And it's like, you don't have to shy away from things just because you can't do a commercial with them. And in fact, I would even lean away from that because then you get pigeonholed into that space. So to me, it's been like a really awesome process to like find for like self-discovery about like how much worth you actually have in kind of abstract ways that you wouldn't have expected.
I want to highlight that, Alex, because I think that is the thing that most people miss about wanting to get a quote celebrity or talent partner on board. I think the expectation is all about how many social followers do you have. Mm-hmm. And time again, you know, when I chatted with there's a D2C brand about a week ago that I was chatting with, and I was like, hey, you know, we know this musician. She's really interested in getting involved. I think, you know, you could be aligned. Would love to make an intro. And the first question out of the startups line is like, how many social followers? It's like, listen, that's not the first of all, like that can be gamed, right? You got to go look at what the actual engagement is. Secondly, social followers don't lead to conversion. It's just top of the funnel. Anyway, all that aside, they're not thinking that next level. They're not thinking the network. They're not thinking the other doors that can be open. And so if there are founders that are listening to this, I mean, like, let's highlight and double click what Alex just said, which is you have to expand what your expectation from a celebrity or talent investor is. And you might actually be able to get a lot more from them than just saying, hey, can you post, you know, a feed post for us once a month so we can up the sales?
100%.
But it's also mutual, right? Like you have, Alex, you guys are very into doing that, you know, hands-on work. A lot of talent isn't. And so it's a mutual expectation where startup founders should think bigger about what the potential is, but also be aligned with kind of talent's perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like when I was back to like predominantly being an angel investor, like I was not that active. Like it was like, you have my investment. If you feel like you want to use my name in a press release or something, like go for it. I'm going to support you, you know, when I feel like it's right. But I'm just, you know, I'm just a little investor, not writing a massive check. I think when you launch a fund that's, you know, a celebrity focused fund, I guess you would call us to some degree, like then you really have to like up the ante. And, you know, I think there's two things that's different. If you're just, hey, a celebrity and you want to invest in tech, like go for it. And you should, you know, decide when you're making that investment, like what role you want to play in it. If you want to be super active, then you should like set terms therefore to like benefit from that. And if you're not, you know, that interested, or if you are super interested and you want to launch a fund like Kevin Durant, you know, then you can take a different approach. And I think it just depends what level you want to play at. And it could be really helpful on both sides, you know, depending on what your interests are and how much you want to get in it. I got, you know, thrilled with the space and super fascinated. So we were like, let's just go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. But, you know, if we had this conversation 5 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I just like writing checks in the companies that I think are cool. And that's kind of it.
Yeah. Amanda, how do you think about, because you play a little bit of a role as a matchmaker. So you see it across a lot of talent and a lot of startups. And how do you make those matches and make it all work to kind of maximize, you know, benefits, but also align expectations?
Are you talking about like, go ahead, sorry.
Oh no. I was just gonna say usually it's about well, part of it is about who the audience is. So for companies that are trying to reach a certain demographic, we can go and look in sort of the roster of clients and say who's like targeting that audience, whose audience is really like cares about that specific sector, and maybe they're the right partner. But it also has a lot to do with risk tolerance, right? So like some clients are really interested in investing early stage and being a first check and being part of the creation and very early stages of a business, while others just want to help put fuel on a fire that's already burning. Those are very different risk profiles, and so that's an important determinant. And then it's also like what's going to move the needle for the company. Like, is it, to the point earlier about enterprise tech, is it really about behind the scenes support and business development, or is it really forward facing? And if it's really forward facing, is that about a big marketing campaign? Is that about social support? Is that about showing up somewhere? And then figuring out the levers that the artist or athlete has to contribute. Is it time, money, brand, platform, etc.? And so once you sort of dive through all of those different components, you can pretty quickly identify who are the best candidates to support a brand. Oftentimes the brands have really good ideas about who they want to work with too, and generally speaking, good reasons why. It's not just because Matthew McConaughey is a big name, for example. They want to work with Matthew because he's passionate about Austin, for example. And if the company's based in Austin, that might be helpful for them as they're recruiting new talent to join the company. So it's very bespoke, but it ultimately comes down to the different things that the artist or athlete have to contribute to the company, their risk tolerance, and then their passions and interests in a given vertical. Like the only way that these things ever work is if the artist or athlete inherently cares about the product, team, mission, brand. If they don't care, they're never going to spend the time on it, no matter how much they invest in it, no matter what the payout is. And so finding, I hate to say it, but finding that level of authenticity is increasingly important to solidify success in these partnerships.
Yeah, Amanda, that was a good breakdown on it. And I think in this discussion, we probably talked about brand. I don't want to say pejoratively, but in a way like, oh, you know, you don't want to just do it for the brand deals. But depending on the type of opportunity it is, it can make a big difference. And there is a good opportunity for it. I mean, I think the example of Matthew McConaughey and Austin was spot on. I think about something that so many rappers who invest said they aren't necessarily always just looking for the cash grab themselves. They want something that can apply to their brand. Like they are thinking actively, what am I aligned with? And that for a lot of them, in many cases, could be something more related to consumer tech since they are forward facing, but not always. I think we see more on the B2B side as well. So I think that the brand piece is definitely big. And even if you are doing it more for the, I guess, more from a consumer perspective and you are really trying to use like them as influencers, right? There are great benefits there too. And I do think that, you know, to Jay's point, looking at social follower counts isn't the best way to do it because artists have so many ways and so many touch points. I think we all know, Alex, I'm sure you know this better than anyone, that however big the artist may say they are, our impression of how big someone is not a indicator of how impactful they could really be. And there are a number of ways to leverage the impact that they have if you're trying to use them as a way to grow your audience or in order to have a cheaper way to acquire customers, whatever it is. The social indicators aren't necessarily the best way to do it, and there could be other ways to do it as well.
That's spot on. The other thing I'd highlight is that it's not just about social impact, right? It's like, how do you evaluate brand impact? How do you evaluate social impact? How do you evaluate financial risk? Like those, all three of those levers fit really squarely into the decision-making process on both sides of the spectrum. Like the company has to be willing to give up room for an investor or potentially some sort of sweat equity and see value in it. And the client has to think, or the artist or athlete has to think that it's worthwhile for them from, again, financial upside or brand equity, or even just general alignment. And I think it's really important to think about all of those factors. It's not just about social followers, to your point.
Amanda, you guys have the biggest celebrity flex of this year in that Prince Harry joined your portfolio company, Better App, as a chief impact officer. Like, how did that come about? And to the point around alignment, I'm curious kind of what's the backstory there?
Great question. So we, as you know, we've been an investor in BetterUp since the end of 2019. We invested in their Series C, and we're really impressed by Alexi and their team and how they were using an enterprise technology solution to help with mental toughness and workplace happiness and productivity and resilience in the workplace. As it pertains to Harry's partnership with BetterUp, we advised the Duke on this partnership, which was the most authentic sort of alignment of interest when I spoke about mental resilience and mental toughness. Like Harry, if you go back way into, if you search Harry in the past, like he talks a lot about mental toughness, mental health, being prepared no matter the landscape. And what BetterUp was doing in a professional context was really aligned with his thinking of taking his sort of perspective on mental toughness into the workplace. And so now having him as the first chief impact officer is really, really aligned with both what the company wants to achieve in terms of expanding overseas and increasing sort of the engagement of the employers that use the platform, but also for him and being able to talk about how important mental health is and how important mental resilience is, and how leveraging a coach and a professional is not a sign of weakness, but in fact is a sign of strength and looking for help to grow and support yourself going forward alongside your employer. So we were very lucky and very thankful to be advising Harry on the transaction, and can't wait to see what's to come with BetterUp. I think there's a lot more room to run.
That's incredible. I just really wanted to hear the story, so I appreciate you indulging me. Alex, I want to go back to you because it was something you mentioned earlier was, when you were an angel investor, you weren't as involved, and then when you raised the fund, it became, the real job with real commitment associated with it. Like, why did you decide to go that far deeper? Like, technically, you could have just, been a very involved angel investor. Why did you choose to raise external money and dive that deep?
Because I think I was treating it as just a passive, revenue stream. I was like enjoying the process of having good investments, but I was also just sitting around waiting for those opportunities to come to me. And I felt like, when we began to put effort into seeking out, great opportunities, I felt like more of an obligation to myself, and obviously now a ton of LPs, to do a great job and really make a difference. And and while I was passive in angel investing, I didn't, it was really exciting to talk to these founders and learn it. But that was like kind of our learning curve. It was like, oh, how can we make a difference beyond just an Instagram post or a tweet or something like that. So that process for me, it kind of happened over time. I mean, obviously we're really focused on music and things like that, and that's kind of the center of, and still is the center of our world. But as we began to explore, it's a scary thing to get involved in a space that you don't understand. I mean, I remember when Drew was like, "We should start a fund." I was like, "I don't even know what the hell that looks like." I was like, what do we do, and where do we start if that's something we want to do? And I think also like approaching it with like kind of that respect and being really humble about not knowing anything is kind of what got me really excited about the space to begin with, because I imagine, I have this really bad comparison, but as a musician DJ, when a celebrity started DJing that had never DJed before and was getting a lot of press around it, I kind of felt like they were making a mockery of something that I took really seriously. And I really didn't want people to have that same feeling when we got into the space. So we kind of did 9 months of outreach to anyone and everyone that would speak to us. And we still do it every day now. And, the process is like asking for advice and, learning from other people's experiences. And, I really enjoy that. And I've always found, and I find this really true to be the case today, is that all the great investors I know, the first thing they say when I ask them about their experiences is that they don't know anything. And it's the investors that I speak to that say they're like the best and know everything and all off, that I think are like the insecure ones that actually don't really know anything. So, for us, it's like I'm constantly coming in like under the assumption that I know nothing. And, I just want to be a sponge. And that kind of motivates me more to just want to dive deeper.
I love that the humility you guys came into the industry, and I love your take on people who are overly confident are ultimately insecure. That's could be a description of the entire industry, to be honest.
I mean, I felt like, I mean, I remember Milan got some email from somebody that was like, "Oh, even the Chainsmokers have a fund now, LOL." And I was like, I didn't get angry at it. I was like, this is like great motivation because he's not lying. Like, I understand how that person is feeling right now, and I want to do everything I can to disprove them and show them that we respect this business and what happens in it, and want to learn from everybody in it. It's like, I imagine it's like, we have our reputation. It's like moving into a cul-de-sac, and it's like, oh, who the hell are these neighbors now? And we wanted to be like, go around the neighborhood and make bring brownies and and make sure everyone was comfortable with this idea.
I love it. But
What's in the brownies, Alex?
It's not mushrooms, I promise you. It's a.
Well, so what is your biggest lesson from kind of doing it, for real for the last year, other than no one actually knows anything?
Man, I mean, that's definitely one of the most important lessons. I think it's cool to be. I mean, I think two actual fundamental things are probably you don't need to be so valuation sensitive. If you believe in an idea, you should do it, and don't worry about if you're getting it at 30 or you're getting it 150. I think that, for us, at least at this stage in our career, we want to be a part of in the game, and I'd rather be in the game for a little bit than not in the game at all. And then I also think that it's just so important. I've been lucky; we've done a terrific job finding people to support us in our career, whether it's our managers or agents or tour managers and lighting guys, and finding people that are hard workers and ambitious and driven. I don't think you need to and no, this isn't an offense to anyone that went to work at Goldman Sachs, but you don't need to have that pedigree or background to be good at investing and successful. I think you just need to have those inherent qualities that make you want to work hard and are never satisfied with anything you do. And those to me are the things that I always try to identify in founders, because Drew and I, I have a lot of other friends that are musicians that just sit around all day by their pool and chill out and enjoy their life like that. And for me, it's just I want to see how far I can take this in every facet of my life. And when I see that in someone else, it really excites me. And I just can't get enough of it.
The valuation insensitivity was a true hot take. You get the hot take award. I love that.
Everyone's probably going to disagree with me on that, but I truly believe that is something that people get too wrapped up in.
It's one of the fundamental debates of the industry. So you sound, between that and the fintech and SaaS is where it's at, you sound like a pro. No, you work with a lot of people who are at the beginning of the journey, especially, compared to Alex, who's talked to pretty much everyone in the industry and got all this knowledge. You work with a lot of athletes who are at the beginning of that and just trying to get smarter about the space and how they should allocate their money. How do you think about that education process, and where do you see people make the biggest mistakes?
Oh, it's a great question. So first off, just to clarify, we are a venture capital fund first. We just so happen to have several dozen athletes and entertainers who are LPs in our fund, but the primary LPs in our fund are traditional family offices, high net worth individuals, et cetera. So for us, we are a venture capital firm trying to do our best to deliver great returns for our investors. First and foremost, I spent 10 years as an operator and a founder, and every day I'm still trying to learn how to do what I'm doing now as an entrepreneur with a fund. So I just, to clarify that we're not a sports fund, we're not an entertainer fund, we're a venture capital fund, and kind of the cherry on top with some of our deals when we're in highly competitive situations is that we do bring a more differentiated and interesting LP base, but we're not doing name, image, likeness deals or anything like that. And so just a little perspective there. But we lead with education. I'm passionate about education and bringing more people into the technology space. I'm the biggest cheerleader for tech and innovation. I mean, entrepreneurship is just what gets me out of bed every day. I'm excited to see where the next great ideas come from, and they come from all walks of life. And so for us, we have hundreds and hundreds of professional athletes, and many of whom should not be investing in tech, and I won't take their money. They haven't made enough to take these type of risks, in my opinion. For me, it all starts with education. Trying to bring more people in, have great, try to find out what's the medium for delivering the message of what tech is, why it matters, how you can get involved. And then for those who want to lean in and do want to invest, if it makes sense, we're excited to bring them into our family. But for us, I think our approach is to say, how can we provide you with a risk-adjusted and more diversified way to get exposure to this kind of rising tide of the technology sector? And how do we help you understand, what the opportunities are more broadly? So I just want to be additive. We want to be additive to the entire sector and just, kind of be a force for good and continue to learn. And look, we don't come from entertainment or from sports. Just trying to, again, be an advocate for good there and lead with education.
Hey, Noah, can you actually talk more about the athletes, the celebrities that come up to you and they want to invest, but you don't think they either have enough money or you think it may not be the best investment for them? Because I feel like that's a really interesting point that probably doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, sure. And it's a great point. Look, it's not my decision to tell someone where they should or should not spend their money. But I'm of the opinion that, if you haven't made a certain amount of money in your career, you probably should be taking care of your retirement, being a little bit more thoughtful about that. And so I always want to make sure that somebody's financial advisor is involved in that decision. Because the last situation I ever want to be in is when we're doing capital calls and anybody is not able to fulfill those capital calls. I'm happy to lead with education. We produce lots of educational content. I'm really also trying to spend a lot of time trying to find groups and communities that are overlooked because maybe they can't invest in the sector. So, for example, women's sports, it's really unfortunate that women control so much of the wallet spend, and yet so many of the WNBA players, unfortunately, aren't able to generate enough revenue to where they can take these sort of risky investments in many cases. So it's really about education and helping people understand the risks. And that's what I talked about earlier with portfolio diversification. A lot of folks don't recognize that the failure rate of startups, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just if you haven't been educated on the differences between a seed stage company's risk profile and a public company's risk profile, it's easy to make those mistakes. And so all of us had to learn that information. We're still making mistakes. I mean, even the Steph Curry of investing, they're still, swinging and missing at least, half the time. And I just mixed my baseball and basketball metaphors there. But, venture capital is a game of slugging percentage. It's not batting average. And I think it's important that people recognize that so that they're not just putting money into these startups and thinking it's a sure thing, especially when we're in a bull market where, every round seems to get marked up. And so
Noah, is there a number or like a tenure of athlete where you're like, it's 10 million or it's 8 years of, contracts? Like I'm so curious what the threshold is.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'd say our fund minimum is $500,000, which is drawn down over 4 years. We have waived that, especially for some individuals who would like to be involved, but may not have made as much. And we'd like to make sure that they're included. So we do have the right to waive that. So I don't have an exact number, but I'd imagine for a lot of folks, if they haven't made 20 million or more, I would be advising them to probably not invest in our fund. But I would advise them if they want to get involved in tech and angel invest, they should absolutely do it. Just think of it like you're going to Vegas. Only bet what you're willing to lose. And I always say, whether you're investing $100,000 or $50,000 or $1 million, at the very least, you have to slice that into at least 10 bets. That's my one ask of anybody who asks for advice, is I just say, please spread your bets. Outcomes are so big in startups that, to Alex's point about just, if you see a rocket ship, don't ask what seat, just get on board. We can have a separate debate about valuation sensitivity, but I just encourage diversification.
I think you can think about it in an endowment model of asset allocation if we want to go back to fundamentals too, which is if you have 100% of your liquid net worth that's investable, then put, say, 10% into alternative investments. And of that, maybe 2 to 5% goes into venture capital. And there's your dollar amount that should be deployed over a year to, say, 3 years, or maybe 5, depending on how early you're investing. And the goal is that the investments you make in year 1 return capital by year 5 or year 7, if you're really early, or I guess year 10, depending on how long people are staying private. And then reinvesting those proceeds thereafter. So I don't think it's that hard of a thing to solve for, but there is a distinction to be made between taking equity in startups for services versus writing a check. And I think that there are people that may not have a crazy liquid balance sheet to be able to write sizable checks, but you could always take equity for services in the interim and build up expertise that way, using your brand equity as a mechanism or as a form of currency in the world of startup and business.
Yeah, Amanda said it so much better than me. So well done. I would say like no more than 10% of your liquid net worth should go into this asset class. But again, I defer to financial advisors and Amanda.
Amazing. Well, on the topic of financial advisors, Alex, do you now get a lot of other, DJs, peers, what have you, asking you for advice? Like, given the success that you've already had, and you've already had some big home runs, like Public is being a great example. Like, do people just come to you like, give me your secrets?
No, not really. I mean, I think that, well, we've been in COVID, so like maybe when we're like hanging out with everybody, people will be asking more about it. I love sharing any knowledge or info that I have with anybody that's willing to listen. And I think, as time goes forward, like I think crypto, NFTs, all of this space is going to create a new rush of, celebrity investor that has interest in the space. Blau has been a great friend of ours from the start of our career. And it's so exciting to see him have this new like evolution of his career through the NFT space and crypto space. And I think that's going to, a lot of, artists are taking a real interest in that area. And I think that's going to, be a really exciting space for them to play around in. So hopefully, yes and no. I love anytime I get to have conversations with anyone about this stuff. But, we'll see what happens as time goes on.
That's actually shocking to me, but maybe COVID is to blame.
I got enough text messages, so if no one wants to reach out to me, that's all good by me.
Got it. Well, the conversation has been so great. I haven't taken any audience questions, so I apologize for that. If anyone in the audience has a question, raise your hand, and we'll call on you. The one topic we haven't really touched on directly is a little bit touched, Amanda, to your point around maybe taking equity for services. The most extreme version of that is actually coming on as a co-founder of a startup. And Jay, you have a whole thesis around it. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you believe in that model in particular?
I would love to. Yeah. So, as my esteemed colleagues on this panel have talked about, I think celebrity investing is not only inevitable when you are in a tech bull market, but it is actually a prudent part of anybody's portfolio construction process. What we're also starting to see is a lot of these, let's say, just call them talent broadly. When I mean talent, I mean athlete, celebrity, and artist and an actor. When talent is starting to look at the value that they can bring to a brand, a lot of them have said, hey, actually, I am really passionate about this category. I might want to start a company in that category. So that's sort of one end of the spectrum, is that they decide to actually incubate the idea. The sort of second piece of it is maybe they say, okay, you know what? I want to find a product that's out there that's pretty early that I might align with, and I'll come in as a, quote, co-founder. Because the word co-founder these days doesn't actually mean what we think it means. Co-founders can come in 2 years after a company actually exists. And they'll typically come in these days with some sort of a title along with it as well, which is, hey, it's co-founder and chief creative director. And then sort of as you go further along that spectrum of ownership, right, then you start to see, okay, there's some JVs where maybe there's a product or technology, but they create a celebrity, subcategory within their company. And then we get sort of closer to what we typically see, which is a endorsement type deal, but the endorsement is paid out in terms of equity, as opposed to in terms of cash. So what I just described here is a spectrum of folks realizing that, when they are a talent endorser, they are an employee. And the general shift that we are seeing with folks that have, whether it's social platforms, whether it's a massive network, is they are realizing that ownership matters more than endorsement. We hear this across the board from athletes. Dan talked about it very eloquently about all the rappers that have realized the value that they can have in the ownership of their platforms, whether it's their platforms in the music industry itself, or it's their platforms in things like, Ace of Spades or other brands that they can be a part of. My passion in this area actually just started with looking at a lot of companies that had, quote, celebrity investors. And realizing, as I was mentioning earlier, that a lot of those companies were expecting a lot more out of their investors than the equity percentage on the cap table really would represent. And so not everybody is like Alex and Mantis, where they're going to lean in and say, look, we're happy to, open our Rolodex, which again, that makes me sound so old, like who knows what a Rolodex is, but open our cell phone list and make some calls, right? And what you're expecting there is, somebody that has a fraction of a percent that came into your Series A round, doing work that you would expect somebody who is a early employee or even somebody in your executive suite doing. So where I've been spending a lot of time over the last, call it year and a half, is actually working with startups that, especially at the earliest stages, that want to align themselves with talent and want that talent on board as a co-founder, co-owner. You make up the word, but really it's setting those expectations up front about what talent is doing. So whether it's investing in a company co-founded by Kyle Kuzma called Barcode, and should be coming out this summer, where Kyle is like, he's in it, man. He is deciding the bottle. He's making sure that he loves the font that goes on there. He's obviously been a big part of the formulation of the product. So just a quick plug. So Barcode is a better for you sports drink brand. Starting with sports drinks, obviously there's a whole category around plant-based and better for you that's growing in there. Kuz has been like in on every piece of the decision-making, and also has just been a really great ambassador for the brand, whether it was in the bubble or now with a lot of the stuff that he's doing on social. When you have talent like that really wants to lean in, they want to have commensurate equity in that business. And so an example with that is, okay, he's got, equity the way that if that company was bringing on a COO at this stage, they would incentivize them with equity that vests over a couple of years. And then on top of that, he decided he wanted to invest some of his own money. So he's achieved his ownership threshold, or his team, whatever the ownership threshold they wanted, through a combination of preferred and common equity. That, I think, is a structure that I'm very interested in. I think is going to become much more common over the next decade. And so where I'm really trying to be is say, okay, look, there's a lot of agencies, our friends at UTA, WME, and so on, that are matchmaking talent to startups, but not all the time are they working with startups to make sure that marriage is very successful. And you hear it time and time again that agencies will matchmake talent, but not actually work with the startups to keep the talent and startup happy. That's where I spend a lot of my time, is just making sure that we establish those expectations, we invest in those companies so that we are incentive aligned with them. It's not sort of an agency model, or we're not taking a broker fee. But when we invest in these companies, we're saying, hey, listen, happy that we have a talent partner on board. Here's the playbook for things that we can do together to make sure that this is a successful partnership.
All right, so Alex, you've actually done both. So to Jay's thesis here on co-founders, you started the fund, but also you did co-found a ticketing platform called Yellow Heart. So it's like, why you clearly don't have enough going on. Like, why start that versus just fund someone else's ticketing platform?
Yeah, well, to us, I mean, everything we do has to be an extension or some inherent to what we already believe in and want to do. And for us, that's about bringing great experiences to our fans and the people around us. And obviously being a musician and playing tons of shows, we noticed that there was kind of a broken system that was like rooted in this like archaic way that it just had to be that way. Like carrying a printed PDF to a show just doesn't seem reasonable to me in 2021. And when we started this company 4 years ago with Josh Katz, it was definitely like a kind of crazy frontier technology idea. Like blockchain was not accepted by anyone. In fact, everyone hated the name. Like anytime we brought up that word in pitches, but to me, it solved so many problems around the industry. From scalping to the one-to-one relationship with your fans, having data on where you're playing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we played a show in like Wisconsin, and then we leave Wisconsin to Michigan, and the next day a fan tweets, "Hey, when are you guys coming to Wisconsin?" And you're like, "Are you kidding me? I was just there yesterday. Like, why do you not? How did you not know this?" But, if we had more data, at our disposal, if we could reach our fans, if a fan had been at our show 6 times, we should be able to reward them. The merch function, I just saw so much opportunity through blockchain in ticketing that it just felt like an obvious area we had to get into. And, talk about going from zero to hero, like no one gave a shit about us during COVID. I mean, it was like the worst kind of business to be in. But then obviously with the explosion of NFTs and shows starting to come back, people began to accept the possibilities of what blockchain could offer. And then obviously why we all collect things. Why shouldn't your concert tickets be any different than an NFT for that special show you went to? And then artists obviously are doing all sorts of amazing things now. Kings of Leon did the golden ticket, Blau created an album, there's so many now. So to us, it was just an exciting opportunity to disrupt something that was just flat out wrong and not working properly. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's a long path. It's like, two players really dominate the industry, and so that's a challenging space to disrupt. But I think we have a lot of potential to do some great things and just make everyone's experience better. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all like any business is trying to do, is trying to solve for a problem and create a better tomorrow.
Did you guys raise external capital for that company? I'm always curious about the experience of a celebrity talent co-founded company when they go out and raise capital and how it's received.
Yeah, so we did raise capital. We have a couple of great partners, and we did a very, 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 very small round just recently, but not even public, just to raise some additional capital to like strengthen the team. And then we'll hopefully go out for like a proper Series A in the next couple of months. And I'm actually really excited about it because now I feel like I have a really good understanding of what the VC landscape looks like and what they're looking for. And also just like the relationships that we've made with everybody to get like honest feedback and hopefully some great partners. So, it's definitely, helpful, I guess, to be a celebrity and get people access in, but it's definitely a very different experience raising money for a company than it is raising for a fund.
That's amazing. I do want to chat, Alex, when you go out for a Series A, please remember me, please.
I got you.
Magda would be the most value-added investor on your cap table by far. So definitely extend that.
I keep trying to hire her, but she has no interest in working with us.
I told you I'll come party with you guys and we'll work wherever I go.
I think your boss is listening, so I probably should have said that.
That is true too. This has been awesome, guys. I so appreciate everyone. Before we go, I want your biggest hot take, or if you don't have any hot takes, just your biggest prediction when it comes to kind of, celebrities, talent, and startup investing.
Jay's gonna. I said this on the last thing that Jay and I were doing together, so I hate to bring it up again, but I still believe it to be true, which is that psilocybin and psychedelics are about to have a real moment, and I'm excited to see who's participating in helping to destigmatize some of the therapeutic and medical use cases for that going forward.
I've been trying to persuade Steve that it's a space we should invest in, so there's definitely chat about that too. I love it.
Sounds good.
My hot take is that we've seen Travis Scott literally have such a big influence and impact on every other entertainment industry. He hasn't yet done it for investments, and when he does, watch out.
Ooh, I love that.
That is a good one. I am curious though, because that is like one of those things. He's the best at it that I've ever seen it, but there's also like a fine line where you don't want to like dilute your art and your craft, and you have to like balance between the two, and that's something like we're trying to figure out too. But if anyone can do it, it's definitely Travis Scott. Hot take.
Valuations don't matter.
yeah. Shit. Now I got to give a hot take. I think I don't know. I just think that relationships are the backbone of this whole business, and no matter what you do in life from where you're starting, just the best thing you can do, especially when you're raising money, and this is like an adage that everyone knows, but if you want to raise money, ask for advice. That is literally the most important thing I could say to anyone. And I always am surprised when I'll do calls with like successful people, and not even with an intention of raising money, but by the end of the call, they're like, by the way, do you want some money? And you're like, no, that wasn't the intention of this call. So when you're going out and trying to raise money, don't ask for it.
I guess I'll give a thematic hot take. I think what's obvious is that there's going to be a lot of professional athletes and celebrities who are going to make more money off the court than they did on the court. I think that's going to be obvious with some of the bigger names. But I think what's less obvious is that there are going to be so many athletes and entertainers who we have not heard of, who are not household names, who are also going to achieve a great deal of success by this generation leveraging the power of their platform to achieve more success off the field, off the court, off the stage. And I'm excited to see it.
Noah, damn, man, you got in right before me. So this is exactly what I was about to say. So one of the things that I've been studying over the last couple of years is this rise in talent-owned media. And we are in a very frothy time in media right now. Everybody's starting to take ownership of their own distribution. And one of the precursors to launching your own brand as talent is having a handle on your own distribution, and not one where people necessarily care to ask how many followers you have on Instagram, But something like Dan is doing, which is building a platform, building content, building relationships with your readers, having emails and phone numbers that you can reach out to, because it makes that process of launching your own brand or whatever it is that you want to do when you're an athlete, you want to hang up the cleats, or if you're done touring, building that direct connection with your fans is something that I think if every celebrity is not spending time on right now, they are really missing the bus. This is a very frothy time for media, and media has typically been a four-letter word for a lot of VCs, myself not included, whereas I think they're going to start coming around in the next couple of years where they realize how big these platforms are going to get.
Love it, love it. It's the media. It feels it's the most cyclical part of the overall VC ecosystem. It comes and it goes, and there's definitely hotness to it right now. I know we are out of time, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. I've loved this conversation. You've been my liveliest bunch so far, and that's been great. Everyone in the audience, if you enjoyed the chat, follow the club, click on the little Monopoly house at the top with the double down, and go to doubledown.show to sign up for notifications on future shows. Have a bunch of great things planned. So looking forward to sharing those with everyone. And thank you again. Noah, Amanda, Jay, Alex, and Dan. This has been fabulous.
Thanks
for having
See you
us.
soon.
Thank
Great
you so much,
moderation.
Thank you
Magda.
all.
You're the best.
Yeah, thanks for organizing. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, bye, y'all.
Bye.